Item number 7, general items. Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency. Annual program update to request letter of commitment in support of Sabufka's state grant application for flood emergency response grant. And I believe we have Michael Bissett and Michael Anamini.
Thank you, Mayor Dukes. Members of the council, my name is Mike Anamini. I'm Executive Director of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency. Thanks for this opportunity to brief you on the activities of the agency, of which Yuba City is a constituent member. Every year we provide an update for our constituent members of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency and for the public to keep them abreast of progress last year and upcoming challenges. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give a very brief refresher. I know at least 3 members of this council are probably tired of hearing this review of who the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, but for members of the public, I'll give a very brief refresher. Some of the major programs and projects we're embarked on right now, highlights of last year's very busy construction season. Michael Bissett, who's Director of Engineering, will be providing that. Some of the upcoming objectives and challenges in 2015. I'll get to the request for the Yuba City Council to support a grant proposal by the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, and we'll have time for questions. Thank you. So, Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency is a joint powers authority composed of Biggs, Gridley, Live Oak, Yuba City, Sutter County, Butte County, and Levy District 1 and 9. The agency is encompasses an area of about 300 square miles, about 95,000 people. There's about $7 billion worth of assets that are protected from waterways that ring the basin, including the Cherokee Canal in the north, the Feather River, which is the largest feature on the east, about 44 miles long, the Sutter Bypass, the southwest, and of course the Sutter Buttes on the west. The goals of the agency are unchanged, and when I briefed the council last year, it's to get to 200-year protection in the north, which is a requirement by SB 5, which all communities have to meet by 2025, otherwise some very draconian development restrictions come into play. And to get to 100-year protection in the south, and the significance of 100-year protection in the south, which are not urbanized in the southern part of the basin, is to relieve primarily, not only to provide public safety, but provide relief from the regulatory restrictions of FEMA mapping. Next slide, please. So, the major programs of the agency that you've either been participating in or hearing about, the Feather River West Levee project, that's sort of the big dog in the room. That's a $300 million design and construction project. We're about halfway done, a little over halfway done with that project. Michael will be updating you on that. Sabufka leads that program, strictly state and local money. There's no federal money involved in that project. Sutter Basin Feasibility Study is a federal or U.S. Army Corps of Engineers led program and project. It's significant because it was one of very few federally authorized projects that were authorized last year in the Water Resources Development Act. State, local, federal cost share. So there's 3 parties who participate in the funding for that. We like it because it brings federal money into the basin. Feather River Regional Flood Management Plan is a state-led Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. It's yet another plan, and we're all tired of hearing about plans, but it is important because it does potentially bring some money to the table. It provides the advanced planning to fund projects like the Feather River West Levee project and some of the critical levee repairs that we're doing in the south part of the basin. It's a jointly led effort comprised of the Yuba County Water Agency, Three Rivers Levee Improvement Authority, Sabufka, and Marysville Levee Commission. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Bissett to talk about the more exciting work of the Feather River West Levee project.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. My name is Michael Bissett. I'm the Director of Engineering for Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency. So as Mike talked about, I'm going to focus in on our Feather River West Levee project, provide an update. It's great to see a lot of people in the audience today, especially younger members of the audience, so welcome. So our project is a 35-mile levee repair project. It starts from Star Bend in the south and it goes all the way north to the Thermalito Afterbathe. So the colors blue, yellow, and green are the active areas of our project, and that's the 35 miles of our project. Within that 35 miles, 27 miles consist of slurry wall construction. As Mike noted, our goal is 200-year level of protection for the urban areas, and we'll achieve that when we complete those 3 segments of the project. In the south, the red segment, all the way at the bottom of the map, we're working with Department of Water Resources to look at funding opportunities to repair those areas down there, and we're focusing in on some critical repairs right now. We started our project in 2013, I should say the construction of our project in 2013, and it's a 3 construction season project. So we're actually in our last year of construction, and we'll be completing all 35 miles by the end of this year. And it may roll into a little bit of 2016, and then we'll have closeout documentation and all the paperwork involved in our project. But we'll have the public safety improvements completed by the end of this year, which is a remarkable goal for everybody involved, especially the council members here and the staff that we've worked with. We've gotten great cooperation, so we want to thank you for that. As Mike noted, our total project cost $286 million for this project, so it's a very large project, and it's cost shared with the state and the locals. Next slide, please. So for 2014 highlights, so last year we completed our plan specifications and estimates for the project areas B and D. We bid and awarded that construction contract. That was a $98 million construction contract. We awarded that contract and we started construction last year in the spring. We got all our necessary permits and right-of-way to begin construction. We also reinitiated construction in project area C. C was the project we started in 2013, and we completed that project throughout 2014, and we're wrapping up all the final details of it right now. So those were major milestones to reinitiate project C and start on B and D, and we were successful in completing 17.5 miles of slurry wall last year. So that was the largest slurry wall contract in the country. So that's remarkable. So we were very proud of that. Along with slurry wall construction, we had associated earthwork, and we had many pipe modifications. So we had to rectify a lot of the existing penetrations throughout the levee so that they would conform with current day standards. Some of the pictures, can you go back real quick? Some of the pictures that I get on the bottom. So on the left is a large stick excavator. So that machine does the majority of our conventional slurry wall construction. And the slide on the right is a dozer that mixes all the soil with bentonite clay and water and pushes it back into that trench, and that's what forms our impermeable barrier to prevent water from seeping through and under the levee. At this time, I also wanted the highlight of construction for 2014, which I want to note here to the City Council, is the coordination that I've had and my team have had with your staff, your Public Works Director, Diana Langley, and all of her engineers. We've had a lot of coordination of our project. There's a lot of items within the city that required constant communication and coordination, and we were very successful there. So I wanted to thank Diana and her staff tonight. Next slide, please. The picture at the top, that's a deep soil mixing machine. So where our long stick excavator could not reach, the depths that it couldn't reach to, we had to utilize this machinery, and this could go as deep as 120 feet below the ground surface to construct that slurry wall. So I wanted to throw that in there. We had a couple of those machines working last year, and we'll have a couple more out this year when we start construction. So that's for Feather River West Levee project. Other successes in 2014. We completed the feasibility study. So that was the federal study that was started at least 10 years ago, started out by Sutter County, transferred over to the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, working with the Army Corps to complete that study, turn it into a chief's report, and get congressional authorization for that report, and get it into the 2014 WRDA. So that was a monumental achievement for that study to finally finish that and start competing for federal funding and bring more money into our basin for public safety improvements. Lastly, we applied for and we've been awarded additional state grants for additional projects. So I noted the Gridley erosion repair that's up in Gridley. Orville Wildlife Area, a flood stage reduction project. So that's very much at the northern reaches of our project. And a second round of regional planning. So we're looking at all opportunities to bring in funding to continue with public safety improvements in addition to the Feather River West Levee project. So we have a lot of activities going on, and we've been bringing in additional monies.
Mike, I understand the acronyms, but for the public, could you explain what WORD is?
Sure. It's the Water Resources Development Act, but they had a second R, redevelopment. And so that's the funding bill that the federal government puts out for water resource projects. And typically it used to be done on a every 2 years, and lately it's been 5 years, every 7 years. So if you can get your projects in a bill and get it approved, it's a monumental achievement. Next slide, please. So for 2015, so we've actually been continuing our construction since we've had this drought conditions. We've been completing work in C. We're completing our 2014 work in project areas B and D. We're continuing to work, which is great. We have good partnership with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, allowing us to continue with our construction work. But we can't degrade levees during the winter, so we're looking at restarting our operations in April. So to begin construction back up in B and D. We're going to complete project area C, close out that project, start working on our closeout documents. We're going to complete our design work and acquire all our permits for the gap project. So we have several gaps within our project areas that required more time to complete our design work. And it was around major pipelines, around the UP Railroad, which is what that stands for. The 5th Street Bridge. Some of these elements that require a lot of close communication and coordination with other agencies and going through their approval process. We didn't want to hold up the majority of our public safety improvements, so we identified these as gap projects and put them on a little bit longer timeline. So we're going to complete those designs, get all our approvals, and begin construction on those this year also. And then lastly, we're going to continue to compete for federal appropriations. So our executive director and council member Gill are going to be going to Washington, D.C. later this month, meeting with all our congressmen and other agencies to get into that funding cycle. So we're working on that as well. So I want to turn it back over to Mike, finish up with challenges, and then a request for the council tonight.
Thanks. So very quickly, Mike went through a number of successes for the agency, doing the things that Yuba City and the other member agencies have charged us to do over the past couple of years. But there have been a number of rocks in the road, and you're going to be hearing about some of these. Some of them may make the paper. So I just want to sort of provide advance warning about some of the things you're likely to hear about with respect to some of the challenges the agency is facing. First of all, the state funding. This has been sort of a long, ongoing issue with the way the state funds these projects in an incremental way. So far, we've been successful in getting that funding, but the state bureaucratic processes have been very difficult. They continue to be difficult. We don't foresee anything but success in getting that funding, but it always comes in at the 11th hour. Cultural resources, many people have been hearing about. These are significant Native American cultural resources that have been discovered during construction of the so far 20 miles of levee construction, and we anticipate that there will continue to be issues associated with the respectful treatment of cultural resources that are discovered during the natural course of construction. Right-of-way is always an issue. We're acquiring property rights for 300 properties, and if there's any way to shut down a construction project, it is not to be successful in getting access to lands needed for actual and necessary construction. Federal appropriations, Michael just spoke about. That's a funding cycle that we need to get in line for. By the way, WRDA stands for Water Resources Reform and Development Act. 2014, just because we have authorization. We're about halfway there. It's the appropriations that brings the appropriations bill or bills that brings the money into the basin. Urban level of protection is something that I know is near and dear to staff's heart and to this council and the city, and that is to provide the technical support so that the city of Yuba City can make a determination that you've achieved the urban level of protection. And while the levee improvements and the independent panel of experts that make a finding that we've achieved this 200-year level of protection next year goes a long way to meeting that, there are many other requirements that have to be fulfilled, and Sabufka is charged with supporting the city's efforts in that regard. Rural critical repairs, we didn't talk about it too much. The project that Michael went through is the quote urban project that protects largely the urban areas of the sort of northern part of the basin. We're also have received an acceptance of a grant from the Department of Water Resources to do a repair down by Laurel Avenue that's south of our urban project. So that's additional project that you'll be hearing about. Orville Wildlife Area, Michael talked about, is another ongoing project. Many of the more controversial things that you've been hearing about are some of the proposals by the California Department of Water Resources with regard to big system-wide improvements like widenings and setbacks, some of the more big picture, more expansive projects. Those are far into the future, but as the representative local flood control community interests, we participate in many of those planning efforts. Next slide, please. So we have a request. This is a rather pro forma request to seek support from Yuba City to apply for a grant. It's a requirement that the Department of Water Resources has with respect to grant applicants for a specific state grant that we actually already have. It's a emergency response grant program, and it's another round of funding that the Department of Water Resources is supporting with Bond 1E funding. And it essentially augments what we've already been doing to coordinate emergency response flood planning in the entire Sutter Butte Basin. So we are requesting that the Yuba City submit a letter of commitment in support of Sabufka's grant application. There's no local cost share. This is 100% funding, and it would support things like emergency response planning, hydrology studies, hydraulic studies that would support Yuba City's urban level of protection, and other related tasks that would help the larger community coordinate emergency response efforts in the event of a flood. With that, I'd be happy to respond to any questions with respect to the request for a letter of commitment from the city or the agency in general.
All right. Are there any questions of Mike? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to ask any questions or speak on this item? All right. I would entertain a motion.
Move the recommendation. Okay.
All right. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you. Thank you.